All right.
All around the world. To the beach, y'all. Let's go. All around the world. Y'all know this is so yeah. To the beach, y'all. Yeah.
Alrighty.
Man, I think I scored more points in the dance-off sequence than Asim Thabit did last night.
Hashim Thabit was he just cannot stay up. I mean, he cannot stay upright. I don't know. I mean, he's a tall guy. Funny story. My wife actually met him and another guy at the Cheesecake Factory, and I think they were trying to hit on her, but we became Twitter friends after that. Not me and my wife, but me and Hashim Thabit and a Vanderbilt player that was with him. Anyways, that's not even what we're talking about. What we're talking about today is daily fantasy NBA. So
Every player I give you today will be better than Asim Thabit was last night, guaranteed. I'm putting a guarantee on any player I pick will do better.
did you get burned, Grant, by Hashim Thabit?
Yeah, among other people, but Thabit was probably he might have negative points. I think he might have actually gotten me. When you put a guy in the minimum salary spot, the hope usually is that they at least just zero out. I'm pretty confident that he had one rebound. I think that he might have gotten a negative 0.5. I think he might have turned the ball over once. I don't know. I think it was a
Listen, I don't want to cut you off, but it's tough. It's tough for you to argue about a player on a Thursday night slate. That's what I always say is that it's you can't complain if one of your players did not or your team didn't perform on a Thursday night with two teams. You cannot do it. So anyways, this is the first NBA daily fantasy show on fantasyinsiders.com on Insiders TV, and we are happy that you are joining us in the chat. Looks like we have a lot of people in there, so if you have any questions for us, feel free to ask in the chat, and we will get to them, or one of the quote-unquote experts will also get to them. I'm Soccer Dave, David Kitchen. You can reach me at Soccer Dave, and we also have a few of our guests. I don't know what is wrong. It seems like Skype is it's really it just doesn't like Dave Loughran, but he is with us. His audio, Dave, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Okay,
can hear
good.
you. So you're coming through loud and clear, and glad to have you. Glad to have you with us. You wrote the Friday FanDuel article. We'll get to that in a second. That can be seen on fantasyinsiders.com. And then also we have Grant Gurtin. Grant, the one, the only CEO of Fanium. No Fanium swag. What is up?
Yeah, I was about to say nothing on. I'm going to work out after this is over. So the whole Clipper stuff. I jump right out of here and make it there. So got a class right after this is over. Doing kettlebells. Saw Timothy Bradley do it on TV on 24/7 and thought, man, that guy looks good. I got to be doing that. So
well, I need to get my workout back on. I've been sick this week, so I think that Monday is going to be the start of when I get back into Blake Griffin shape.
Just a funny note from Napster Man in the chat. I gave away all my videos. I haven't given it all away. I'm sending a second shipment out, and it was supposed to be this week, but then I got busy. So next week, I will be sending out my second shipment, but I still have plenty of hats. Don't worry, I have more than enough for myself.
Yeah, and we're hopefully going to be giving away some. We got some new shirts in. I know, and I've got your address.
I'll wear it.
I've got your address. It'll be. But you see that? You see this? Yeah.
That's sharp.
You like it when I lift up my shirt, don't you, Grant?
It's very exciting. I got me both. I got the blue one and the gray one now. Now you owe me the dual. I should have my home and away jerseys.
I'm actually beginning to feel grateful that my video isn't working.
Yes. You can see Laffy's article. Do I call you Laffy or Laffy D? What do you want me to call you, Dave?
We can go with Dave. I mean, that's
Okay.
more appropriate.
Okay, I will call you Dave
Yeah,
then.
my last name's actually Loughran, right? But it was always mispronounced, so that's how it turned into Laffy. Yeah.
Oh, Loughran?
Now it's coming together
Yes.
for you, huh?
Yes, it is coming together. So, why don't you take us through your FanDuel article and just some of the guys that you really see as value guys on FanDuel? Obviously, there is a lot of news going on today.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's simple. You know, you have a lot of newer players out there, and they don't necessarily know how to base their salary cap on on balance, and they kind of splurge on the first big name they see, regardless of matchup. So, I thought, instead of the generic daily play column that you see on every website, it'd be nice to kind of mix it up and do the 3 tiers and kind of provide them with a player at each tier at different positions. Yeah, value tonight. Tony Roten, I was lucky enough to squeeze him in. I was actually at work and I caught it across my Twitter feed around 6:58 and threw him in. But tonight, apparently Carter Williams is in a walking boot, so I don't know. I would closely monitor that one because Roten's an excellent play.
I believe he's out. I think he's doubtful.
Is he? Is he? Okay. Yeah, I didn't think he was ruled out yet, but doubtful's basically out. So
yes.
Yeah, I don't know. Jordan Hill doesn't have a great matchup, but you look at his price. He's another play that could reward you handsomely if he gets those 30 minutes, 28, 30 minutes. I don't know. Jeff Teague at upper mid-range salary. Love him tonight against Philadelphia, who just allowed Jeremy Lin to explode on him. Yeah, there's a lot of good plays out there tonight for a pretty decent salary range. So I don't even Robin Lopez. I would give a look. He's averaging over 31 minutes a game. He has double doubles in 3 straight. So yeah, I think there's a lot of. I think you can there's some nights where you can't put together a good lineup just because how zero value plays. But tonight, yeah, there should be plenty of opportunity for that.
Yeah, I agree. The position that I'm having the most trouble with is the shooting guard position on FanDuel because
KCP, Contavious Caldwell Pope's the guy to look at. Apparently, Billups is out, and either he or Stuckey's going to start. He looked good there. On Wednesday when I was watching. I was subject to a little bit of the Pistons Warriors game, and Pope looked good in. They had it on NBA TV, and Pope looked good in his action. I saw him there, and the beat writer for Detroit said he's expecting Pope to start. That just came through in the last 15 minutes. But I think that Contavious Caldwell Pope is a guy to at least keep your eye on.
But his name's still Contavious, so
he is a guy that I watched at Georgia. Georgia played Vanderbilt, of course, twice a season until last year, and they redid the SEC schedule. But he's a guy that is not afraid to put it up, and he has been putting up decent numbers. He would be a guy that I would consider a GPP play on FanDuel because there are a lot of other value options. Like TMH Sport just said, he's 5,200 on DK, so he is expensive a few places.
43 on FanDuel.
Yeah.
That's what I was
Jordan Crawford is at the same price. I feel like it's Crawford, and then I'll give you a list of guys, and you guys tell me who your second and third option is out of these guys. You got Lance Stevenson, and you got Bledsoe, Wade, and Evan Turner. Those are a few shooting guards. Who would be your second and third? Grant, I'll start with you.
I got to go with Stevenson at the top of that list only because he's playing against Milwaukee. You can't do anything. So I expect him to get rebounds, points. He'll reach that $5,700 price point. He'll reach value at that price point by the third quarter if they have to take him out there. Milwaukee's one of the worst basketball teams I've ever seen in recent times after watching that Heat game. But then beyond there, I think that Dwayne Wade's consistent, but I like having point guards out of the shooting guard spot, so I'd probably go with Bledsoe and then Wade.
Dave?
Yeah, I love Eric Bledsoe, man. The guy, he's consistent. He's putting up 34, 35, 36 fantasy points every single game. And, Brooklyn's really not that good at shooting guards. They're allowing, I forget what it was, the 5th or 6th most fantasy points to shooting guards this year for what it's worth, And, Yeah, I like Stevenson, but I don't know what it is about the guy. He's just one of those guys that always scares me. For 5,700, yeah, he's an excellent option. Dwayne Wade against Dallas, I love him, but for 8,400, I think there's a lot of options elsewhere at other positions that I'd rather spend the money on and feel more comfortable with their upside.
Yeah, and Napster Man just said no James Anderson. Yes, I should mention James Anderson. Obviously, he's another one of the cheapies. I think I mentioned him on Twitter today when I asked that question. But would you guys have Bledsoe or Turner? Bledsoe coming off a hot game. He's still going to. I mean, he's still going to put up some points. He's a hyperactive guard that can really rack up some stats there. So, would you have him above Turner even with MCW out?
Yeah, I would.
Turner's got a good matchup. The Hawks are not a great defensive team, so I think that goes either way. It just depends on you can probably flip a coin on that. I think Evan Turner's playing out of his mind right now because they didn't pick up that option for his next year, so he wants to get a monster contract. So every sport, not limited to one, guys in a contract year, their stats go up. Every Turner is just so is Eric Bledsoe because he's also playing for a contract next year. But I think that Evan Turner's not a guy you can go wrong with in a GPPR cash game today.
No, I agree with you. My only issue is when you live in Philadelphia, you are extremely scared to play anybody at any time. Even when Carter Williams was coming out. And obviously I don't let that influence, who I actually play. But, yeah, look, Turner's been on fire. His splits against Atlanta last year were awful, but I don't think you can really take anything historically that he's done and really apply it to this year because of how he's playing. It's completely different. So Turner's a great play. At the same price as Bledsoe, really just flip a coin in my opinion. I think they're both great plays, but I'm going to go Bledsoe at home.
Yeah, I mean, either I think is a good. That's why I'm having such a tough call with it. Davis Maddock in the chat just said that the Phillies' offensive pace is it just creates fantasy points, is what he said, and I agree. Right. I mean, they are up and down, and that's why obviously Tony Roten is a guy that you have to play in pretty much every one of your lineup.
Absolutely.
I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah.
He is a stud. His first game is a triple-double. He was fun to watch at Washington for either, I don't know how many seasons he was there, but he and Isaiah Thomas were always fun to watch. And now you look at them, and they both have a lot of potential in the NBA. But man, to triple-double on your first start, I don't care if it's in overtime or not. He obviously is going to be leading the pace.
Wasn't he playing an all-sick team, though? Wasn't it the game when they playing the Rockets? They're playing the all-sick Houston Rockets, though.
Well, they only Harden was out of that game, I believe. And you know what? He
were
was
still
only
all-sick.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he was one rebound shy of a triple-double by overtime. And if you look, he's actually been relatively productive off the bench this year in limited minutes. So I think regardless of them being sick, there's still a decent squad. I don't know. If you look at the stats they put up, they didn't look too sick to me. I mean,
they played damn well. I think whoever tweeted out that the whole team was a game-time decision was pretty funny.
Well, yeah. However, they still played pretty good. I mean, you had Parsons who struggled. You had Parsons who struggled early. I think his back was still tight, but once he got warm, he was red hot. I mean, the Rockets played decent. Obviously, Dwight had a monster game, so I don't think you can discount even a sick Rockets team is still better than the Sixers team, but they competed, and their pace, I mean, with the new coach, they are just running up and down. Last I checked, they were the third fastest team in the NBA, so that is going to be definitely something that I'm looking at. I have a question in the chat from Kalani91. He said, thoughts on Jordan Crawford on Draft Street? People saying he's too expensive, but the game logs don't lie.
Efficiency's the fear, though. If that guy starts chucking. You want a good example, Brandon Jennings won games for me, but I faded him on draft day on Tuesday night. And, those guys look good on paper, but then when they start chucking up shots, I think he missed like 10 field goals, Jennings. So it's a similar game type. Crawford has been efficient recently, but that's the only thing to watch out for in playing a guy like Crawford on draft street, is that he could just start chucking.
Yeah, he has. What's up, Kalani? But listen, if you look back to last year in the games that he started, he's averaging right around 25, 26 fantasy points a game. Now, yeah, he has upside. I'd say he probably has, in formats that reward assists and threes and rebounds higher, I'd say he has, 40 fantasy point upside. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I like him, but it depends on his price. In my opinion, he still should be viewed as a value play, borderline value play, kind of mid-range, but if he's up there with other viable shooting guards, no, I'm not touching him, even though I do like him tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's still the Celtics too. You got to temper your expectations for the team he's playing on, but I think he's a great play on FanDuel tonight. And I think on Draft Street you have to just be aware of what you're paying for, but at the same time, I think that he gives you a chance to. I'd rather use him in a GPP than I would in a heads-up game. But
right, and look, opportunity equals production. So if he's seeing the minutes and he's seeing the field goal attempts, then he's worth a play. It just depends on what you're willing to pay for him.
Yeah. I agree. His price on Draft Street is honestly, it's too big. It's too much for me. It's $11K. I think on a site like Draft Street where you're penalized a half a point, which is pretty major for missed shots, there's no bonus for 3 points made. I think it's a site that he could get 2 times value. I think he'll get anywhere from 22 to 25. The upside there is a little limited. I think on FanDuel you have to play him. On Draft Street, though, especially where they don't categorize it for shooting guards or point guards, I always like to go with point guards on Draft Street. And I don't have a problem at all with if you guys have any sort of Draft Street questions for me, I'll ask them. You've
been killing it on Draft Street recently, too. I mean, the credibility is all there. You're not going to pump yourself up. You've had a few really big days on Draft Street this year.
Hey, Dave.
Yes.
Let me shoot another option at you.
Okay.
CJ Miles at 4,300 could be a fantastic play tonight.
If he starts.
Even if he doesn't start at 4,300, he's gonna see ample minutes. When Deion Waiters was out last year, if you remember, Miles produced some monster games. I mean, listen, he's your kind of GPP play that if this guy catches fire, he's going to drop 30 points on you. I mean, he did it last year. I remember he had 20-something points in the first quarter alone. So keep an eye out for him. At 4,300, I'll play him over, any other value play if he starts. If that guy sees 30 minutes a game, there's no question that I'll take a look at him tonight against Charlotte at home.
Yes. He's another guy that I'm not sure I would pay for on a site like Draft Street, but on the other sites, he's definitely in play because he's a volume guy, and I forget the exact stats, but on when I looked at the stats page either this week or last week, as far as ball hogs go, the number of shots given per possession, he was up near the top. He's not afraid to let them fly. And he has an interesting matchup definitely today versus Charlotte. What are your guys' thoughts on Kyrie Irving tonight? I love him. Especially on a site like DraftKings where he's shooting guard eligible.
I love him. I think he's
a good matchup on Walker.
I think he's going to have a good game. And as I put in the FanDuel post, he's the guy's averaging in 5 career meetings with Charlotte, he's averaging around 40 fantasy points. And he plays so much better at home. This guy's averaging 6 more points at home than he is on the road this year, 12 and a half more fantasy points at home. So even last year, he was way better at home. There's no question that he's a great play. Now, on FanDuel, he's a lot of money. So spending for him, I can't necessarily, get down with that, but I wouldn't be against it either.
I'd rather play Tony Parker on FanDuel at $7,800 against the Utah Jazz that are just – I know that could be a blowout, but they're really, really bad.
Yeah, his upside is limited, though, to me. And I think with Kyrie, there's really no bounds to that guy's upside. He could give you 65 fantasy points on FanDuel. Now, that's a reach, don't get me wrong. But, looking over Tony's game logs, the guy, his peripherals really have been limited. And I love him. I love Tony as a head-to-head 50-50 play. But aside from that, he's not really my guy.
He's got a good chance to meet value, though, at his price point. I think with very little doubt playing.
I don't disagree with that even the slightest bit. Yeah.
We'd like to welcome the Takeover in the chat. He is one of the top players, and he says Tony P sucks. That's analysis for you. So obviously he's not a Tony Parker fan. I don't have a problem with Tony Parker tonight as long as his salary.
Tony Parker made me a lot of money during the playoffs, so I've got very little beef with Tony Parker, and he's not as young as he used to be, and no one is, but he still has got it. The Utah Jazz.
If you look at his game logs right now on FanDuel, actually it says he played Arkansas State on the 9th of November, and he put up 68.94 fantasy points, so that's solid. But aside from that, he has 24 fantasy points against New York, 28 against Philadelphia, and 13.7 against Washington. His highest totals this year have been earlier in the season, but aside from that, he hasn't put up more than 30 fantasy points since the 5th of November against Denver. So he's 6 games removed from that.
Who also don't play defense. So I think that if you played the Utah Jazz every night, you'd have a much higher average.
Right, but with that coach, with Popovich being in there, the second that they start racking the points up, it's just, in that system, it works well. They win, but it's not a fantasy favorable system at this point. And I just, his minutes, he hasn't played more than 30. He hasn't played 30 minutes in 4 games. I don't know. He's a good play to meet value, but not much more than that.
Yeah, I think the Spurs are underrated, though, now. We're at a point in DFS where I think the Spurs, I don't see people playing Duncan much. I don't see people playing Parker much. And I understand when they're in the second of a back-to-back. But there are guys that aren't necessarily priced all that high and are still really, really good players for their team. So if you want to fill a lineup out, that guy's not going to be the first person you put in there. But if you got $7,500 and all the rest of the plays look good, I think he's a guy you can put in your lineup tonight and feel pretty good about. I have no problem with Parker. I have no problem with going with Duncan tonight against Utah. Either the Jazz are not a good basketball team.
I like Conley, though. I would take Conley at the Lakers over Parker, and I probably would even take Kemba Walker over them just because I like the upside. I like to know that they can give me 50 fantasy points. Maybe not Conley, but Walker.
I agree. I like Conley tonight, and Parker is in play. I think he and Duncan are both in play in GPP formats. I would not play them. I wouldn't even play Duncan where his salary is low in head-to-head or any sort of cash games, just because I think there's a lot of better plays out there, and there's a lot of value out there. I mean, you take a look at the news, and you're probably going to have a lot more news with this Bucks team. It'll be interesting to see if Zaza really goes. They say he's starting tonight instead of Henson, so I'm not sure. Davis asked if you're starting John Henson tonight. I just think it's a kind of a roll of the dice. He asked about head-to-head. I think it's a roll of the dice in a head-to-head game, even because he didn't even get 30 minutes last game, and there were 7 healthy bodies, and he did not get 30 minutes. Chris Middleton.
He's one of the best per-minute producers in the game right now, but that matchup, it scares me. Even Chris Middleton, did you see what he did last week or the other day? It's just hard. It's really hard it's hard to play him against a team. They're 5-0 at home. They're undefeated on the year, and those starters could be out of the game by the second quarter at this pace, man.
Yeah. So that's my exposure to them is going to be limited. The one guy, Caron Butler, is going to be out tonight. So the one guy is the guy you just mentioned, Dave, and that is Chris Middleton. He is a guy that the past 2 games.
Play the whole game. He might play the entire game.
He is really good.
43 minutes. 43 minutes last game. You're right.
They have no one else. They have no one else. So they don't have I had to watch the entire Heat Bucks games on Tuesday and a lot of success stacking a bunch of Heat players, and I think that the Bucks, even when the Heat were demolishing them, they couldn't take guys out of the game because they have no one else there. So, Henson ended up getting to 18 points because there was no one else to play. He was in there with the bench. So I think that Henson's still in play tonight. He hasn't been maybe as good as some people may have hoped, but he's still in play. I think that Middleton's a nice play because he's going to play a lot of minutes.
Yeah,
and Ridnour might get some tonight, but I wouldn't play him.
Henson's the one guy that I would target, I think. I think Middleton – I really do think Middleton could be the guy that gives you 4 fantasy points, regardless of his minutes. But I'm serious. I think Henson is the kind of guy that will produce under any circumstances. Albeit maybe not that much. I still think that he's the kind of guy that's not going to sink your team.
No.
Yeah, he
has to get points by default.
Okay, so you guys are saying that he's a cash game player. I don't have a problem with that analysis. I'll just probably leave him out of my cash games unless something changes. We had a question about Corey Brewer. That T-Wolves game is going to be interesting. We'll talk about that in a second. I do want to welcome everybody that is in the chat room. We have 65 people right now. Not just that's past the extended family members that are in there. So good to have them with us. You can always find us on Twitter. We'll have the Twitter handles up, and we're excited about starting the Fantasy Insiders Daily NBA show at 3:30 Eastern Time on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Fridays. Thursdays we'll take a break. Also tonight we have the college football show at 11 p.m. If you ever miss a show, go to youtube.com/Fantasy Insiders. Feel free to subscribe there, and that's where you'll always be able to find the archive for these shows. Also want to give a shout out to, let me pull it up, our boys at LouDogs.com. So they're a great source as far as very much active with with their forums. They basically every day have forums going on, talk about plays, and that's good. Also, if you haven't used our Pick 5 feature on the homepage, make sure you're using that, because you can kind of see where the public's up at, and we'll start kind of analyzing that on the show and letting people know kind of where the public is. So that is kind of my little plug for the day. I just remember that I have a tea in the freezer. Dang it. All right, so I'm going to go get that real quick. This is what's great. I'm going to let you guys talk about this T-Wolves game, and if you think it's a blowout, and if you think that some of these guys like Kevin Love, Ricky Rubio, and even Corey Brewer, if there are any must-plays.
I think Kevin Love meets value without a doubt. That guy can meet value in the first quarter.
He's been unbelievable, and Denver's allowing the most fantasy points to opposing power forwards this year by a lot. This guy, look, altitude or not, he struggled at the Pepsi Center over the past couple of years. I'd actually put that in the column, but if you look, he played him once there in 2011 and had 43 points and like 17 rebounds, something Kevin Love-esque. He's the kind of guy that it's hard to pay for him. It's going to be hard to fit a lineup, but if you feel confident with those value plays, yeah, definitely throw him in there because he could explode tonight.
Yeah, my guess is there will be enough value plays, and as we saw on Wednesday, a lot of value plays are going to break closer to when lineups come out. One value play we haven't talked about at all, but I'll wait. Is Kirk Heinrich, who's going to be a value play in the Bulls game with Derrick Rose out. Kirk Heinrich's looked the best he's ever looked. I've seen him. I've watched all the Bulls games. Huge fan. He looks the best he's looked since he's played, at least the best he's looked in the Bulls, because I've watched all their games for years. But back to the Nuggets and the Mavericks. I think not the Mavericks, the Timberwolves. I think a lot of guys have opportunity. I think Kevin Love, Ricky Rubio is playing really well, and even Kevin Martin, who had I think an off night the other night. Denver is not not the best defensive team in the league. Kevin Martin can score. And as people have mentioned, I don't want to be a broken record. He is in an offense that's very well suited for him with Ricky Rubio, who just pitches him the ball to shoot, and he starts now. So on the whole, Brewer could be. There's no one who's not in play in this game on either side if they're starting, and the over/under is 210. If the field of value is good, you could play pretty much anybody. Pekovic can be played if you wanted to. You pretty much could throw anyone in this game into a lineup if you feel good about a player in this game. This is the time to play him.
Oh yeah, look, Kevin Martin has 23 or more points in every game but one this season, and that was against his old team in Oklahoma City. He's a great play at 7,000. You could do a lot worse. And even Brewer, look, this guy isn't going to wow you. He's not going to put up crazy numbers, but when you're playing 35, 36 minutes a game, there's consistent production there, right? So, look, 27 fantasy points, 18, 24, 32, 37. You could do a lot worse at 5,300. And Rubio, look, with his assist totals, it's really hard not to like him in this game where you're expecting a lot of points. So I like him. He can be risky because he can't shoot at all, but yeah, there's a lot of good players. And on the opposite side of the ball, there's a what is his name? Fareed?
Kenneth.
Yeah,
He's in trade talks right now, so he's been playing. He's probably playing hard because of that.
And let me give you another one. Mozgov, 3,500 on FanDuel. Now, this guy's not going to do what he did the other night. He's not going to score that many points, but he did put up 39 or 40 fantasy points in 28 minutes against the Lakers. So you could do a lot worse than that. Look, 23 points, 9 rebounds, and 4 blocks in 28 minutes. So he is minimum salary on FanDuel.
Yeah, I like him on FanDuel, and he is. The thing is, it's all about lineup construction, and I just don't know with all the other cheap positions if I'm going to go real cheap on power forward. It will probably be someone else beside Mozgov.
He's at center.
At center, I'd probably go Olenek over Mozgov. The thing about last game is that J.J. Hickson got in foul trouble, and so they had to play. Everybody actually got in foul trouble, and so they had to play Mozgov a little bit more. I want to see without foul trouble what his minutes are like, because they are 8 points better with him on the floor as far as defensively. They are 8 points defensively better with him on the floor than without him. He does bring a defensive presence. However, his offense is just not there. But if you give him minutes, if you give a big man minutes, they're going to get some rebounds, some putbacks. So I'm interested to see what happens there. You know, you've got. I'd rather play Hickson if his price is right, because I think Hickson at center is definitely appealing.
He was good last year. He got a lot for the Blazers when he played consistently. Hickson was a very, very strong producer. And I think that we're still too early in the season at this point to just completely rely on this year's game logs. If you watched Hickson last year, I think that he was a very solid value play and has a good chance if his price is low to give you something positive.
Here's the difference, though. Last year, Hickson was seeing, more minutes and consistent minutes. Brian Shaw's doing his best Mike D'Antoni impression by playing everyone 21 minutes a game. So I don't know. I'm a little bit concerned just about the minutes there. I don't know.
He was 40 a game last year. You're right. That is a big difference where Hickson was. Right. So, the Blazers, he was playing 40 a game. So that's a big difference.
When you look at Hickson this year, right? Even with what's his name out? Shaqtin' a Fool.
JaVale McGee.
But, JaVale McGee. Look, he played, like you said, he got in foul trouble, but still, he hasn't cracked 30 minutes since, the first game of the season. So he has the upside. He has potential to produce, but with limited minutes, a guy like him who isn't flashy and relies on rebounds and points, it's hard to trust him without many peripheral stats.
Interesting. We'll take some questions. If you guys have any questions, we will answer them, and feel free to continue asking them in the chat. If you're watching this on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Fantasy Insiders, then you can always catch us on Twitter. And boom, here are our Twitter handles: at SoccerDave, at LaffyD333, and at Grant Gurtin. And always feel free to basically follow us at Insiders DFS, and we'll also do hopefully a good job at getting some news out. If you go to our homepage, fantasyinsiders.com, you should be able to see news there with a daily fantasy spin. So that's been pretty cool, and people have liked that. Let's get to some of the questions and people's comments. Rollerblades with a Z says Steve Blake is always a decent value. Yay or nay on Steve Blake tonight, and one word. No analysis, one word, yay or nay. Grant?
Nope.
Dave?
Nay.
Interesting. I think that's... I don't say... It just depends on where his price is, but there are...
Vegas doesn't like that game, though. That's my fear. That's all I said before the show. Vegas has a low over-under on a Laker game, which scares me.
Well, I'm in the middle, so I will say yay, nay. Value in Dwan Blair tonight. Grant?
Go ahead, Grant.
Minutes scare me with Blair, but he's very productive when he plays. It's all about the price.
Yeah, he's productive, but again, there's too many options out there to gamble on a guy that might not see 20 minutes, that probably won't see 20 minutes.
I think that's...
And it's against the Heat, too. I mean, you're playing Miami, which I know they don't have a great front court, but still.
until
Now there's always
go ahead.
Go ahead. All right. There's always the possibility that Miami at home blows Dallas out and Blair sees some garbage time minutes, but I'm not willing to gamble on that.
I like the Birdman as a value play. If what's his name's out again, Haslam. I used him on Tuesday. The Birdman is if he's minimum salary, which he is in a few places, he can be an interesting. He can produce in very small amounts of minutes. If you're looking for a guy like Blair, I was making that comparison because Blair is also pretty similar in the sense that he can come in for 20 minutes and give you 20 fantasy points if you're trying to get a lot. What's his price on Draft Street? I can see Anderson on Draft Street.
He was a Draft Street hero last week, or on Wednesday rather. Someone had him and Chris Middleton together, and he did really well. But Bosch was also out there, and he's going to be back tonight. But I mean, he's a guy that you just never know. I'm not sure if I would roll him out with all the other news. Let's get to some other questions, and we'll just answer them real quick so we can get to some of the news, and then I want to get to some of the totals in Vegas. Let's see. We have a question mark on Rodney Stuckey. Dave, what do you think about Rodney Stuckey?
I think you should stick Rodney Stuckey on the bench because I'm okay. I'm okay for tonight. I'll pass.
Let's see. We have top value pick of the day on FanDuel. Has to be Tony Roten, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. I love him.
I'll give you one other one though. DeMar Carroll at $3,900 is not terrible. He's one of Dink's favorite guys.
He's just a low upside guy.
Yeah, but you're asking for value. I mean,
yeah,
right.
And he'll be a fast paced guy. I mean, the game is going to be going a mile a minute there. So we will. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. We did have a question: Carroll or Middleton on FanDuel. I'm going Middleton. I actually don't mind playing both those guys. I was messing with the lineup earlier where I just kind of punted the small forward position and used them both and went value other places. But there's a lot of news, so I'm not sure if you want to do that. But Carroll or Middleton, Grant?
I think Carroll's safer, but Middleton has more upside.
Dave,
I'm gonna go with Grant on this one. I think I would go with Carroll.
Well,
because I think I would. I think there's more consistency there. I can rely on a guy like that. At least for 20 fantasy points.
Someone says Mr. Anderson. He's going to be a guy. His price actually came up on some of the sites. However, he's still a value play on FanDuel if he starts. We obviously saw what the ceiling was when he went off. I'm glad he had some sort of offensive production. But Grant, you look like you want to say something.
No, I just saw Mr. Tuttle's tweet about that we've gotten someone else talking to me out of my outlandish statements. I'm right about 50% of the time. I'm right 100% of the time. So that's the
we have let's see. We have some other questions. CJ Miles, yes, we have given him love. We also have a question: better value on DraftKings, McRoberts or Mozgov? Oh.
Can we go with neither?
Yes, we can go with neither. But if you put my feet to the fire, I guess I would have to go McRoberts on upside, Mozgov on safe.
Completely agree.
So we'll see. Let's see. Have you seen Carroll play? Yes, Kalani, I have seen Carroll play. He actually was a freshman at Vanderbilt and then transferred to go play for his uncle in Missouri. So I've seen him play. I was watching him play in high school. That's how much I've seen him play. I didn't watch him any other times though. Lopez or Drummond? Grant?
Okay, I'll go. Drummond. Which? Oh, okay. Never mind. I was thinking the other. Yeah, he's a center. Wait, they're both center. Which Lopez?
I'm guessing Brook.
That's one of the questions I was trying to figure out. I think Drummond, though, is the guy there. Drummond's per-minute production is phenomenal. And he just, as long as you're not playing on a site that penalizes you for missed free throws, that's always a risk with Andre Drummond because he'll be the worst free throw shooter in the NBA. But besides that issue, that guy can produce.
Yeah, if we're talking Brook, I do like him tonight. But I like Drummond too. He's got. I mean, on the topic of upside, Drummond's got some wild upside. The guy can really produce. I like him, but I really, if we're talking daily, I wouldn't go with either of them tonight. I think there's better options out there. I think you'd be selling yourself short to go with either of those guys. Maybe not Robin, but if we're talking about Brook, I don't know who we're talking about. I'll assume Brook.
Yes, it is. Brook. Yeah, Brook is the guy.
I'd look elsewhere. I would for either, but if I had to, I would go Drummond. I'm with Grant.
I think Drummond's a good GPP plan any night because of his upside, but...
Well, what scares me is that he turned his ankle at the end, playing in garbage time on Wednesday. So I don't know.
The Kings, though, are... Cousins isn't an easy matchup necessarily, but there's going to be I have a feeling there are going to be a lot of shots in that game.
They're both going to get flagrants and be kicked out by the first quarter.
Are you taking the chance on Cousins tonight?
I don't like him tonight against that front court, really. I mean, not that they're all fantastic defenders, but I think, again, there's better options out there. I'd rather spend my money at another position instead of 9-4. I'll go Al Horford against Philadelphia. You see what Dwight Howard did to them the other day? He and Cousins are the same price. I'll take Horford.
I'd rather try to pay for Kevin Love or LeBron than try to pay for Cousins also tonight if I can. I think LeBron's going to have a good game. The only issue is how quickly. LeBron has a chance to have a ballistic. We haven't talked about it all today. This is a really good matchup for LeBron against Dallas. He has a chance to go absolutely ballistic against the Mavericks. And I think that he's a guy. FanDuel, it's really, really tough. They've made it hard this year, but he's a guy that if you can find a way to pay for LeBron tonight, is tonight a LeBron night, or would you pick Love over LeBron tonight? It's a question. I think that Love's probably a safer pick, but LeBron's got more upside in my mind.
Let's ask the chat. Let's see what they think. I think that I don't know. This is a tough one because on DraftKings they are the same price. So yeah. I would probably have to go LeBron over Love, and that scares me. It scares me to fade Love. Dave, you're on Love, correct?
Yeah, I'm in love with him.
I am too. Obviously, the thing that worries me is the blowout factor, but I think that LeBron is a guy. I mean, you look at the Mavericks; they love to run the ball, and you look at the Heat, and they are going to be. I mean, they obviously stepped it up last game with their defense. I think they're going to be running a lot. So I think LeBron has. I don't know if you can say a higher upside, but he definitely is the guy that if you have to choose, I'm going LeBron. But everybody says Love, and by everybody, I mean Scott Melwig, who says Love like 3 or 4 times. So there's going to be some situations where you have to choose one or the other. And
you can play both. It's not a bad idea. If you find a way with the value.
That's not happening.
I did it last Friday.
I think it can happen.
Possible as you think.
So let's
in a GPP only.
Well, it just depends. I'm of the mind that you can play 2 expensive guys in cash games if you have major upside guys with your cheap plays like a Tony Wroten tonight. If you go Wroten, Heinrich, and let's see, who are some of those other players? Carroll or Middleton. You have a complete stars and scrubs lineup. I think FanDuel lends itself more this year to basically play that stars and scrubs to where you can play those minimum salary guys with even the high ceiling guys and still have a good cash game lineup. And I think that we've seen that a lot with some of the plays of some of the experts. You look at Condia's lineup. A lot of times he's got the stars and scrubs lineup in. So I don't have a problem with getting either of those 2 guys in there, and maybe even DraftKings too. DraftKings is another site to do that. Now,
even easier in DraftKings, you can late sub, which gives you the opportunity to watch those scrub news even later into the night if you want to try and fit them both in. So and also Star Street has the same functionality now, so you can fan throw down any of those 3 sites. You can do that.
So here, real quick, if you play both of them on DraftKings, you have 6 available spots left and $4,500 per person average for your next 6 players. On FanDuel, you have 50. If you play, let's say LeBron, Kevin Love, and Jeff Teague, we have 3 studs in there, right? You'd have approximately 57. Oh wait, no, I'm sorry. You'd have 4,600. So yeah, you'd around the line about. I mean, it's doable, but it's what needs to see. Here's the thing with those 3 players or 2 players, and obviously this is why you're playing them to begin with. But they need to explode. They can't have mediocre games. They can't even have very good games. They need to explode. If or your value plays need to play like Wednesday. But Wednesday's an anomaly, in my opinion. You won't see scores like that.
Got a good matchup at 3,800. Roten's cheap. Like Dave said, you put both those guys in there. I think Heinrich's poised to have a good game tonight. He's going to probably play 35 minutes. Trust me, as a Bulls fan, you don't want to see Mike James or Marcus Teague in the lineup. I've watched Marcus Teague is awful. I don't know how many minutes they're going to give him, but if he plays anything like he did in the preseason when he got minutes, it's a very, very scary sight. There's a chance that James plays over Teague, and James is like my dad's age at this point. So I think that Heinrich's a really, really juicy play on FanDuel tonight. That's a sexy play in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you have a handful of guys that are just minimum salary guys on FanDuel that you can plug in with those 2 studs and still have a decent. I mean, that is a decent cash game lineup because a lot of your cash games, people might be reaching for others. They might not have. Some people like Tony Roten was 15 to 20% and owned in my leagues on Wednesday. So I think that definitely that is something that I don't mind doing. Now on Draft Street, I would not play Love tonight as much as I love Love because he's like 23 something. He's a guy that there's just not with the Draft Street pricing, the way how sharp it is. There's just not any of those studs that are going to stay the same price. I mean, you look at some of these other sites, and the value guys are value guys for like a week, 2 weeks. So they adjust every night except on back-to-back. So I don't think you can play them on. I don't think you can play them on Draft Street. With Draft Street tonight, they do have their first qualifier. Unfortunately, the first night was not on Wednesday. It is tonight. So they announced the 100K to first place, 500K total championship, 30 places. And it's a 3-day format. So it goes 30 to 20 on the first day, and then 20 to 10 on the second day, and then the final 10 compete. And Al Smizzle, who is in the chat, actually, he's not in the chat anymore, but he was in the chat. He was one of those guys that won it last year for 50. So it's doubled. I wanted to see a little more. I wanted to see a little more as far as that grand prize. I felt like they could have gone 40 instead of 30, but that's neither here nor there. Let's get to some of the over-unders. Grant, what are you seeing on the over-under as far as games that are really juicy for fantasy points?
I'm going to let this segue into a question from the chat that asked Teague or Lawson. And the over-unders there in the Vegas lines, I actually prefer Lawson tonight if they're if all values equal, because if you look at Vegas today, I think they're about equal talented players. And Vegas has the over-under on the Nuggets and Timberwolves at 210. Super high. They're going to be running up and down the court, and only a spread at 2. So the smartest guys in the business of projecting what's going to happen think this game's going to be very close. As far as Atlanta and the Sixers go, Hawks have a 8.5 point spread. Over-under is lower, barely at 208.5. But I do think that that's a game that could get away from Philadelphia if a guy like Kyle Korver, who's a terrible playoffs player but a great regular season player, just if Jeff Teague starts passing him the hot sauce and he starts hitting the three-pointers, he could actually – I would never play Kyle Korver. He's not my kind of – I don't like getting him in the lineups. He doesn't put up any other categories, but he's a guy that could get you 25 or 30 points tonight against the Sixers team when they're paced. I'm not saying he will, but Korver's always got that type of upside with his shot. So if it's one of those kind of games – I like Lawson, both high over-under games and target. I like Lawson better than Teague. And I know you just mentioned that Teague was a stud tonight, so I'm not sure if you're on that bandwagon. But I got Lawson out of that matchup.
Okay, Dave, who do you got?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Atlanta-Philadelphia game.
Yeah,
and it might get out of hand, but Philly, despite their double overtime game, they're averaging 117 points on the road this year. You have Atlanta, who has scored 100 points or more in all but one of their home games. Granted, they've only played 3, but I think that's a very nice game right there. I think there's a lot of possible points to come out of that. And when you look, Philadelphia has been really big, in daily. They've been really great producers in terms of fantasy points, and so is Atlanta. Teague's averaging 18 and 10 this year. He's hoisting up like 17 shots a game. And Horford's another one. Millsap's I'm not huge on because he's very inconsistent, but there's a lot of value there. Roten, Carroll.
Absolutely.
Not big on Korver, as you said. He's the kind of guy, he's got that, fantastic 3-point record, but at the same time, he's just not the kind of guy that you can rely on to put stats up. And he's kind of like mid-range, low mid-range right now because of that, because he's been relatively consistent. So he's a guy that I would stay away from. And another one is the Minnesota game. That's another one. Minnesota and Denver. What's that, 210 right now, the over-under? And what I like about that is Denver's plus 1.5. So they're expecting a pretty close contested game throughout. I'm a big fan of that. I think there's a ton of fantasy points to go around.
I love Lawson in that game. That guy can really pile on stats in the right matchup.
And again, we have value. We have value there too. So when you're looking at value plays specifically, those are 2 games to target, because why not go for a value when you have a high point total right there and a lot's expected out of that game? So, yeah, that's where I would go. And if you need to play a bench player, why not play a game, play somebody in a game that looks like a blowout? Because if it does turn into a blowout, your bench player is going to get probably 10 more minutes off the bench than he normally would.
Yeah.
Yeah, also, I want to point something out that you pointed out earlier, saying it's valuable here. In a game like the Denver-Minnesota game, which is a huge over-under and a close spread, you also mentioned that they do like to go the D'Antoni style and play the bench. So you can look to the bench for value on the team like Denver. That's where a guy like on the reverse end, Mozgov, if you're trying to do that LeBron combo on FanDuel, maybe you do go for the minimum salary and a guy like Mozgov to throw him in your lineup. So, because we know he's probably going to get 20 minutes. And if they're really running and gunning and it's close, could see a lot of stats for all those guys. So I think that Denver's bench is probably a bench you can target as well.
Right, and that's what makes John Henson valuable too, because you have Miami favored by, 14.5, I think? 14.5. So if he's coming off the bench and they're blown out by the second quarter, he could see more run. So that's something to consider right there. If you give him run, especially, look, against Indiana's bench, oh, man, sky's the limit on that one. But once again, that's hypothetical.
Yeah, I want to, real quick, because we have about 3 minutes. I want to touch on some of that Indiana bench, because it's definitely something you want to take a look at, especially on a site like Draft Street that has such sharp pricing. You look at the bench, and even George Hill at under 10K, I think, is in play there. The spread is 14.5 points. That's a lot.
Right.
So
we're going to the bench.
So, the bench, you've got guys like Scola at 6.8. Who I think is a decent, but even lower than that, you got Solomon Hill at 5K, and a guy that, if you want to go cheap on center, in Mahinmi is a guy that might play the whole fourth quarter, and even some before that, and he can get blocks and rebounds. I think that might be something that you want.
I agree.
Something that you
Let me talk about 2 guys, though. 2 things I want to mention from there before I jump. Lance Stevenson plays the bench. That's a key thing to know. They'll leave Lance Stevenson in. So even the blowout, I'm telling you, Dave, you said earlier that you're a little bit nervous about Stevenson. Don't be. They get in a blowout. Stevenson's almost better, and he likes to attack the boards and get rebounds. Someday other people will realize Stevenson gets rebounds out of the guard position. It's a very valuable thing. I've been taking advantage of that for months. And also, though, I think that Orlando Johnson's a guy. If it's a real blowout to watch, they like getting him in the game. I think he's probably still minimum salary in Draft Street. He's been hovering around 3,000.
He's a guy. He's 6.9.
Oh, he moved up.
He's
I had not looked
kind
at Draft Street's price today, so that's my fault. But Johnson had been minimum salary as a guy I'd like to use there when he was at 3,000. He's still a guy you could look out for. They like giving him minutes now. I've noticed them getting Johnson in the game a little bit and agree on Mahimi. I think that he'll play tonight.
If only Hansborough was still on Indiana.
Oh, man. Psycho T would be an amazing play tonight for sure. I want to see what Scola does. I want to see Maybe he gets some run tonight. Only 6.8. That might be one of the guys I play in
It's a better play than Chelsea.
a qualifier. So
He's shown that he can produce.
Yeah,
I mean, he can produce. He's very inconsistent. He's erratic, but he can produce.
yeah, I think he could get 20 fantasy points. Get at least 3 times value there on Draft Street. I want to, while we have a few minutes, I want to take a look at some of the over/under. That Timberwolves Nuggets game, you just mentioned it, Dave. It's at a 210 with a point spread, point to point and a half, depending on what site you go to. So the highest over/under at the closest game, which kind of surprises me. It surprises me that Denver is this close, but that might make Kevin Love a more startable player than Ty Lawson. Dare I say overtime? Maybe. But also Hickson is another guy in play, so we'll see. We'll see if that's anything. Other high-scoring games, the second highest spread other than that Pacers-Bucks game is the Hawks and Sixers. However, they are the second highest total as well. So Hawks are favored by 8.5, and they projecting 108.5 to 100. So if the losing team gets 100, you know it's going to be a high-scoring game. That's why I think that anybody is in play on that roster. Then the Heat and Mavericks at it's going to be a 8-point spread. They're at a 2.5. And then other than that, the total goes down. And even the Memphis Lakers game with the Grizzlies, they like to play slow. You have Marc Gasol, who is statistically the slowest player in the NBA with the that stat tracker that they have now with the NBA stats being made public. That's what they've said. Games that you might want to stay away from. Other than Heinrich, that Raptors-Bulls game it's going to be like a 92 to 91 game.
The Booze Cruise, though, I think that Gaby had a stat that Boozer's averaging like 24 points and a bunch of rebounds against Toronto, and Boozer plays really well with Heinrich. So with Heinrich in, Boozer's actually a better play. He's definitely a guy to watch out for. The rest of the game, I think I'd stay away from, though.
Hey, Dave, let me mention one thing real quick about that Denver-Minnesota game. Yeah, I think the reason that game is projected to be so close, keep in mind, the Nuggets were 38-3 at home last year. Granted, they're a different ball club this year, but they still play better at the Pepsi Center. And I think that they're going to compete tonight, and I do expect that to be a close game. Look, some teams just play better at home, regardless of the personnel. So, yeah, I think you put some guys in on that team, in that game, and it'll yield some positive results.
Definitely. I want to recap the news, and then we'll get off because, Grant, I know that you have to get off real quick. So, Grant, you can go ahead and slide out. Tell everybody where they can reach you, and then we'll recap the news.
I'm at Grant Gurtin. App is at Fantasy Football. And as the news does come down to the wire today, if you do have any questions, feel free to tweet at me. I'll be around.
Very nice. Well, we appreciate you coming on, and look forward to having you on throughout the season. So talk to you later, man.
Sounds good. Have a good weekend.
Take it easy, Grant.
All right, so let's recap some of the news real quick. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. If you're watching the archive version, feel free to reach us on Twitter at InsidersDFS, at SoccerDave, at LaufyD333. We are always open to giving you guys plays. But let's talk about some of the news. And I think some of the biggest news, a lot of the biggest news has already come out, which is good. I'm not sure we're going to see a whole lot of surprises. KCP, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, as Grant mentioned earlier, is going to get the nod at shooting guard for Chauncey Billups, who is not going to play tonight for the Pistons. So he could be a decent play for sure. You also have John Henson, who is probably not going to start now. However, he is supposed to get some minutes off the bench. How many? We don't know, but you have Zaza and Gary Neal, who are game-time decisions that are expected to try to give it a go. That doesn't necessarily mean that they are going to give it a go, but they are going to try to give it a go. So there you have it. You also have Derrick Rose, who's out, leaving the door open for Kirk Heinrich. Lou Williams for the Hawks is going to play tonight, and in that game is going to be he would normally be a decent start. However, they're going to set his minutes they're going to cap it at 16. So not as much upside as what normally might be there. Dion Waiters probably going to be out, which basically bumps up CJ Miles. Also, Michael Carter Williams going to be out, which definitely bumps up Roten. Roten is the must play on most of the sites. Brandon Knight not going to play again for the Bucks. Did I miss anything, Dave?
No, I think you got it from everything I heard. Why would they get 16-minute limit? Can't you just make it 15? Hey, come on, everybody's getting cute with these minute limits now. It's just a little bit ridiculous.
I agree. If you have yet to check us out on our website, some of the articles, Dave's doing a Friday article where he does the tiers. So he's a guy that is going to be doing a Friday tiered article, which is really cool. I really like the concept of the different tiers that you might want to play. If you go value, then you can look at some of the stud guys. Real quick, Dave, a guy that I did want to ask you about is Dragic for the Suns. Expected to start tonight. His price is pretty low across the industry. Is he someone that you might think about rostering? His eye, he had stitches, like 12 stitches over his eye. Is he someone you think about rostering tonight?
Right now, no, I'm not going to. Even when he was healthy this year, he had that one solid game, and aside from that, he hasn't been great. Look, the guy can produce. We saw that last year. He's a solid mid-range play normally, but I'd really like to take the wait and see approach on this guy, especially with Bledsoe doing so much on that team. His services aren't as needed as they were last year. So no, I would stay away from him. But Jarrett Jack. How about Jarrett Jack? If he gets, I don't know if he'll get the nod, but he's the kind of guy that his starter minutes, he really produced. And he's 5,300 on FanDuel.
Yeah, he's one of those GPP guys. I think there's a lot of value plays where I'll probably be hesitant on rolling him out there at the guard position. But there is, if you're playing in one of those big cash games, or big tournament games rather, on FanDuel, he's a guy that I think you have to look at. We had a question: who are some must plays in the center position? Who do you think is a must play at DraftKings for center position?
I really like Horford at $9,000. Yeah. He's a solid play. Someone I would definitely avoid though is Spencer Hawes. Despite him playing well, Atlanta's allowed the least amount of fantasy points to centers. So yeah, but I really do like Al Horford. I think Greg Monroe has a good game too. He's been very consistent this year, and he's kind of flying under the radar because they have Smith and Drummond there. But he's been able to produce despite both of them, being in there and taking away rebounds and points. So both of those guys, I think, are solid options.
Definitely, I agree, and I think that Cousins, maybe not for a cash game, but Cousins is a guy who's going to get some points. And
I love Cousins. I love that guy.
He's going to be an interesting play to see if everyone's gun shy on him now, and understandably so. So I think I'm going to be interested to see where that lies. And J.J. Hickson, if he was center eligible, I would recommend him. I don't think he is on Draft Street. Maybe he is on DraftKings. I think he's got some upside depending on where his price is over on DraftKings. I know on Draft Street he's probably going to be a guy that I want to balance, that I want to put in some of my cash games. So there you have it.
He's center eligible on DraftKings at 4,800, and Robin Lopez is 5,100.
Yeah, Lopez, another guy that should get a lot of minutes. So that'll do it for the day's show. The first show that we've had. Hopefully we'll have some exciting announcements. We'll have some interactive stuff coming up. We have so many different guests and players coming on. So obviously you've got the guys here at Fantasy Insiders that contribute, myself, Soccer Dave, and Mr. Tuttle, Davis Maddock, who writes an article for us, Dave, who's on with us right now, is going to be on. And we have guys like, players and guys in the industry like Grant, the Roto Experts guys, Drew Dinkmeyer, Dink Piece, one of the biggest NBA players there is, and Michael Leone. You can find them on rotoexperts.com. And then some players like Napster Man, The Takeover, We're trying to get Scott in from draft day, he and Andrew. So it'll be fun. It's going to be a fun show. We're going to have some giveaways, some contests, and we'll see what that has for us. But that'll do it for today. Dave, I really appreciate you coming on the show with us.
It was a good time. Thanks for having me, Dave.
Yeah, man. If you guys have any questions, feel free to stick around in the chat, and we can still talk about it. Until then, though.
All around the world. To the beach, y'all. Let's go.
Yeah, we're playing basketball. Good luck tonight, guys.
Y'all know.